Good evening and welcome. I hope everybody's doing good this evening. We just finished the fourth pada, so we're going to start in again with the first pada, which is the Dharma. There's a lot of subjects. If you look at Da Vinci, he was one of the most intelligent polymaths of his time. Polymath is somebody who's educated in a lot of subjects. The saint that I'm named after, Saint Vincent Ferrer, my name is actually Vincent Ferrer III, is actually my birth name. He was a polymath and theologian as well. But if you look at the amount of subjects we have available to us nowadays compared to the amount of subjects that we had in the Renaissance, we have all the modern sciences, anatomy, kinesiology. I mean, there's so many more physics, quantum physics, cellular biology. The subjects that we have now, there's way more broad subjects that we have compared to in the Renaissance when Da Vinci was around, right? So the Dharma is one of the most important subjects, if not the most important subject that you should study. But certain subjects are more important than others. Like your health is more important than, say, I don't know, another subject. I'm not going to name one, but the Dharma is one of the most important subjects that you need to study. And the Dharma is universal law. And universal law, the Dharma has to be fully understood and comprehended and embodied if you wish to have an enlightened intellect. That being said, let's get into the Dharma. I'm pulling up the text. Patience. Well, nowadays, I think the patience level is about 2 or 3 seconds, because 2 or 3 seconds and you lose somebody. So quick to make a judgment on whether you're going to stay or go. Patience is definitely like a muscle. It has to be exercised. Patience is the amount of aggravation that you can take without becoming agitated. Well, when I was a kid, one of the first things my father said to me after he said, I see, said the blind man, as he picked up the hammer and saw. One of the next lines I remember him saying to me, in fact, these are my first two memories of my father, was patience is a virtue. So even at 4 years old, it was well known that patience wasn't my strong suit. But it's definitely improved just through getting hit over and over again, from taking shots over and over again, dealing with things over and over again. The patience is finally going. Well, plus, if you lose your patience, you lose your understanding. So patience is definitely the boundary between your enlightened intellect and your agitated, unclear mind. All right, here we go. Okay, so Sutra 1.1. What you need to know about this is the original Sanskrit translation is Atta Yoga Nusanam. That was translated originally basically in two different ways. When they said yoga takes place now, they were saying yoga, your journey into yoga begins now, was one way that it was understood by people. The other way that it's understood is yoga takes place now, meaning now is when yoga is taking place. So the second translation from the old school is yoga happens in this moment. My translation with modern day, and it doesn't translate exactly from the Sanskrit, is yoga is being fully present in this moment, body, mind, emotion, spirit, and soul. So when Patanjali said this, the way that Patanjali spoke was extremely concise and to the point. He didn't blabber in a bunch of words. He gave us the bare minimum amount of words that we needed to know in order to attain Kaivalya. And after he said it, the sages and the scribes went over this text, and you're talking about the wisest people from one of the wisest races that ever existed, and they had no political influence. So there's no political or monetary influence in the text, and that's why it's so pure. And as a devout follower and studier of the Bible, there is some lines in this text that are not contained in the Bible that you really have to know. You won't find them in this text. You won't find them in the Dhammapada. Perhaps they're hidden in some of the Buddhist text or the Taoist text. But the way that the Yoga Sutras put it is by far the most concise and direct way of any text I've ever come across. It's also complete. 1, 2. Yoga is stilling the mind. The most widely known translation, yoga is cessation of the fluctuations in consciousness. I give a very Buddhist Taoist translation for this too. Yoga is keeping the mind calm and focused. But the Sanskrit yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta, that's these words you have to know from Sanskrit if you're going to learn any of them. Chitta is mind, vritti is fluctuation, nirodha is cessation, and you're going to see near all the time. It negates what it is. 1, 3. Then the mind rests within the soul. 1, 3 is everything. It's everything. Second translation, then the seer dwells within its own light. So now I start with soul first because I like the word soul better, and I don't think that the soul is discussed enough. In fact, some people, deny it or don't want to talk about it. That's not true. You have a soul. But the seer, I find, is equally as important because when they say seer, it's the thing that's actually seeing. And the second translation, then the seer dwells within its own light. That's important too because light is attached to consciousness. Okay? You'll hear a lot about emptiness. You'll hear a lot about people meditating on emptiness. But consciousness has light. And how do you know it to be true? When your memories bubble up during your meditation, if you introspect the memory, you'll notice that each memory has light in it. 1, 4. Otherwise, the soul identifies with the fluctuating consciousness. So important. So even when you read this line, right? Let me sum it up for you. When you read this line, otherwise the soul identifies with the fluctuating consciousness. You read it, say, oh my goodness, that makes perfect sense, right? During that moment, your soul is identifying with these words. You see? But this, if you understand 1 through 4, you're great. But you have to fully grasp the entire text. 1, 5. The fluctuations in consciousness are 5 in origin. They may be detectable or hidden, painful or painless. Let me give the second translation for this. There are 5 categories of mental movements. They can bring affliction or be free from affliction. 1, 6. Now here's where this is extremely important. They are caused by right knowledge, wrong knowledge, delusion, sleep, and remembrance of the things past. So these are the 5 things that cause vrittis in consciousness. 1, 7. This is another one. The sources of correct knowledge are direct perception, logical reasoning, and factual texts. I'm going to give the second translation because there's so much arguing and lack of clarity out there on what is true and what is false. If we have to be able to establish what is true and what is false, because if you accept one thing that's false as true, you'll never have right vision. And the Buddha calls that perfect vision. So the Buddha says, following the Dharma, which is what you're studying now, the Dharma, is the only path to perfect vision, to quote Buddha. The second translation I give for this is, right knowledge comes from direct perception, inference, and truthful testimony. And even when you read the factual text, and even when you get the truthful testimony, you're still supposed to introspect it and put it through your own logical reasoning and your own personal experience. Okay? Now, this is a well-known truthful text. I guarantee you this text is, there's no lying, there's no ulterior motives. So the text that you're studying, you want to research it, make sure it's a factual text. 1.8. Wrong knowledge originates from a distorted understanding of what is real. And this is why it's so important, okay? I'm going to give one example. I was discussing the definition of a word with someone, and I pulled up a dictionary, and they said, oh, there's a bull on that dictionary, so that dictionary is related to Baal and, the society. I said, okay. So I pulled up another dictionary, which had the cross on it and another symbol on it, and they tried to say, no, that definition is not real. Okay. Then somebody said, oh, well, the reptilians altered the dictionary. No. Reptilians did not alter the holy text, okay? The holy texts are put together by the best scribes in the best time. Do some of them you have to take into political influence into play? Of course. But when you're reading something, you're taking everything into play anyway. Perspective, time period. That's why this text is completely and totally outside of time period. It doesn't matter. 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years from now, this text is completely unbiased. So if you think something that is true that is not true, your vision will always be distorted and your clarity will never be 100% and your insight will never be fully developed. So right knowledge is extremely important, and that's why it's the first in the Eightfold Path with the Buddha. 1.9. Uncertainty arises when knowledge is based on words alone and is devoid of reality as its basis. Here you go. So now when you're studying the text with people, you're coming to a common ground. It is totally absurd to me that you can explain something through mathematics and logic to someone and they can still deny that it's true. Okay? That's wrong thinking. That's wrong view. That's what causes dissension. That's what causes arguments. That's what causes everybody to be in their own thing instead of working together as a race for what's better. It's wrong view. 110. Dreamless sleep is the mind state absence of perception. So now we go right from the most powerful Dharma you can get, and now they start talking about the conscious states. Okay? So they go right into the states of consciousness in 110. Sleep is the non-deliberate absence of knowledge and or thought waves. What are they saying here? Now notice it says dreamless sleep, and down here you're going to see nidra and vritti. So once again, ni and vritti. So absence of this, but nidra, it's not just the word to negate. Nidra is the state of consciousness that's there from the time when you put your head to the pillow to the time when you have a dream. That's the third conscious state. There's 3 states of consciousness. That's it. Nidra, the dreaming state, and the awakening state. Those are the 3 states of consciousness. 111. Memory is the unaltered remembrance of words and experiences. So now this is now notice this, unaltered remembrance. See? If you let your personality, okay, override your logic when you're doing your introspection on your memory will be tainted. So when the memories arise, you have to look at them as they are, not with your personal biases on them. 112. Repeated practice and non-attachment control these 5 fluctuations of mind. So now they're starting to get into how to control it. See how much this text covers, how fast? The way that it does it, you could read books and books and books to get this in the first 12 lines. 113. Effort towards steadiness of mind is practice. 114. Practice becomes firmly grounded when practiced vigilantly for a long time. Okay? If you just started meditating and read 1 line of Dharma, you have a long way to go. I'm not saying if you're a prodigy, you can't get it in a month or you can't get it in 1 study practice, but for over 98% of us, it takes a lot of study and a lot of practice. Even monks who are in monasteries, who are reading the Dharma, have been studying the Dharma for 20 years, and some of them still don't fully grasp it. Okay? Just to give you an idea. And I don't think that they're dumb. 115. Renunciation is the practice of freedom from desire. 115. The highest level of renunciation is when one transcends all earthly attachments and perceives the soul. Okay? This is why another reason why the Yoga Sutras are a very, very powerful and high text. They openly talk to you about the soul and tell you everything you need to know about it, including how to realize it. And according to some of the gurus, it's called becoming self-realized. So becoming self-realized is a big step in a spiritual aspirant's evolution. Let me read the second translation. Hello, welcome. True detachment is lack of desire for any impermanent formations. It is enforced when one experiences the spirit. So, what is the spirit and what is the soul? Well, you're a spirit with a soul. The soul is found in the inner right chamber of the heart, and the spirit is what connects everything. And when you're doing your breath work and you become self-realized, the spirit you can feel when your spirit's in your body. 117. Continued effort and non-attachment develops 4 types of samadhi: self-analysis, union, bliss, and the experience of pure being. So samadhi is a very deep topic. What do you need to know about this? Self-analysis is when you introspect. Union is when you're at one. Bliss is a deep happiness that's underneath that arises. And the experience of pure being or equanimity or inner peace and tranquility is at the core of it. And the bliss is good, but the peace and the balance is actually more pleasant than the bliss is. See? 118. When practice of cessation of mental fluctuations is firmly rooted, only the impressions remain. 119. In asamprajnata samadhi, one may experience existence without a body or become one with nature. This sometimes leads to isolation, deep loneliness, or intense longing. 120. One must practice with confidence, vigor, alert memory, and power of absorption to break this spiritual complacency. 121. Those who practice vigorously with intensity are close to the goal. 122. There are differences between those who are half-stepping, average, and serious about their practice. 123. Or the consciousness may be stilled by deep meditation on God and total surrender to Him. So now there's a couple ways that you can realize God, okay? It's easily proven through mathematics, okay? So if you need to prove it logically, the universe was created. We know that it was created by something because matter can't come from anything, okay? This is proven physics and mathematics. We know that the amount of laws that are in the universe are almost infinite. Gravity, the speed of light, weight, the way that atoms rotate around. If there's one law off in the universe, none of it works. The elements, everything in the universe is in harmony to make it work. So what does that mean logically? It means one of two things. Either A, the universe was created by mistake or by chance, okay? Or B, the universe had an intelligent engineer or engineers, okay? The odds of it being created by chance are less than 0.000001%. So the odds of the universe being created by an intelligent, benevolent force, because if the force is benevolent, they're creating something. It's a benevolent universe because there's balance and harmony in it. That means that there's a 99.99999% that the universe was created by a creator, okay? Now, the other way to fully realize God, which I recommend doing both because you want to do it logically, but you want to develop the relationship with it, is during your meditations, you're following the energy to the source. And the more and more that you meditate on the energy and where it's coming from, the closer and closer you'll get to source. And there's a couple more lines with this here. The supreme being is God, entirely free from conflicts, unaffected by actions, and untouched by cause and effect. 125. God is the origin of all energy and knowledge. So important. 126. God is the Alpha and the Omega, the teacher of all beings with no beginning and no end. 127. God's sound form is Om. How valuable is this to know? God's sound form is Om. 128. Repetition of the syllable Om with full presence of mind, body, and soul will allow one to realize its full significance. So that's what we're doing. We're doing Om, not only clearing and focusing the mind, we're focusing on God, His form. It also leads to the soul. 129. Japa of Om while meditating on God clears hindrances to self-mastery. 130. The hindrances to spiritual enlightenment are, okay, so 130 and 131, it's these two lines every human should know. If you're in a human body, these next two lines are two of the most important lines of information ever spoken in any text by any person. 130 and 131 explain So much. 130. The hindrances to spiritual enlightenment are disease, inertia, doubt, carelessness, laziness, sensuality, erroneous views, failure to keep one's understanding firmly grounded, and slipping from the ground gained. Okay? So these are the main hindrances to spiritual enlightenment. I give a second translation. Disease, dullness, doubt, negligence, procrastination, indulgence, craving, false perception, lack of conviction, and backsliding. Okay? Because the Sanskrit words cover more. A Sanskrit word has a broader definition than an English word most of the time. There's less words spoken at that time. 131. This is the symptoms that accompany the hindrances. So, okay, spiritual hindrances, ha ha ha. Why should I know that BS? I'm gonna go, do this and do that, and this is BS. Why do I need to know this? The symptoms that accompany these hindrances are pain, despair, anxiety, and disturbed breathing. So now, these are the 10 hindrances to spiritual enlightenment, but the reason why you want to get rid of them is because it causes pain, despair, anxiety, disturbed breathing. Second translation, distress, depression, unsteadiness of the body, irregular breathing. So those two lines right there sum up everything that Buddha is saying with there is dukkha, there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is a way to overcome suffering, and then he goes into the Eightfold Path. All right. So if I was going to give a breakdown to some people and I knew this text, that would be a brilliant way to do it. I would break down the Four Noble Truths to give people something to think about and get the first four laws of Dharma down, then get into a path. Then the Buddha starts with right understanding, because what happens right after the Buddha gives people the higher knowledge? They argue with him. So then that's why the Buddha started with right understanding, because they had wrong understanding. 132. Practicing single-minded concentration is the best way to perceive the hindrances and their accompaniments. So right here, practicing single-minded concentration is the best way to prevent them. That's why Buddha starts with Anapanasati. Anapanasati is one of the most important meditations. It starts to build your concentration, and if you sit and practice Anapanasati and read the sutras, you'll reach enlightenment. But there's methods that make it faster. 133. Inner peace is achieved and maintained by cultivating friendliness towards those who are happy, compassion for those who suffer, goodwill towards the virtuous, and indifference towards the non-virtuous. 134. The mind can also be calmed by holding the breath after exhalation. 135. Or by contemplation of an object that helps maintain steadiness of mind and consciousness. At this point, if you're going in and out, if you're not able to concentrate or take in the knowledge at this point, a lot of times when we're studying one of these texts, okay, there's so much knowledge and wisdom in the lines. If your level of concentration and focus and learning curve drops off right now, like if the words are starting, if at first you were understanding the concepts and now you're hearing what, Charlie Brown, you might just want to rest and then come back at a later time when you have focus. When you're absorbing information like that, you want to know how long are your concentration periods and what's your learning curve, because the more you absorb it, the better. Sometimes when I get to my learning curve, like if I'm 10 or 15 minutes into an audio, or I'm 20 minutes into reading, or I've read 2 pages and my conception is down, I'll just put it aside for another time. But still, just hearing it, putting it on repeat works. You're still drilling it into your subconscious mind. 136. Or by concentrating on the luminous, blissful light within. Second translation. Or inner stability is gained by remaining free of sorrow and filled with light. Third translation. All 3 of these translations are important. Or inner stability is gained by contemplation of pure light and consciousness. So this is why I did this text like this, okay? There's 3 Sanskrit words, which is actually 4 or 5 Sanskrit words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's three Sanskrit words here that are basically five Sanskrit words. Okay. But these three words can be interpreted different ways. So these three translations they're all proper translations, but when you're coming over from Sanskrit to English, these three translations are really necessary. So rather than give a commentary down here, I mean, this book is made for people who probably already read a book with a commentary. This is a recitation copy. This is a monastic level recitation translation of the book. I recommend getting your hands and reading any copy. And if you're new to the sutras, there's plenty of yoga sutras out there with great commentaries. And different gurus affect it differently. For example, Swami Vivekananda, he starts out with concentration first. He's very intellectual. So the different gurus do it differently. But my translation really captures the entirety of it. 137. Or when the consciousness is free from longing, or by contemplating a mind that is free from attachments, one can achieve stillness. 138. Or by concentrating on the consciousness's experience while dreaming and during dreamless sleep. Really, I want to change this, I think, in my 5th edition. I think I'm going to add another one. In the translation here, it only says during the dreaming and during dreamless sleep. But in the study of the yogic sciences, they get into the 3 stages of consciousness, and they do include the awakening state. So I'm probably going to change this translation around at some point to where it says while the awakening, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, because it's missing one of them. 139. Or the mind becomes concentrated and still by meditating on anything one chooses. 139 or 140. 140. When concentration is mastered, one gains mastery of the smallest to largest dimensions. 141. When the mind and the heart are purified, the practitioner realizes that the knower, knowable, and knowledge are one. The mind is like a mirror that has had the dust wiped clean. Okay, here you go. So when you're reciting the sutras, okay, you're drilling in the information that you need to know. You're drilling in the Dharma, but you have to attain purity. And you attain purity by practicing the austerity practices, all right, which is the 8 limbs of yoga. But recitation of the sutras, or what's called svadhyaya, study of the spiritual text, is a purification practice. So not only when you read this are you gaining the knowledge, wisdom, and insight, but you're also purifying your intellect and raising it when you read this. But notice it says purified. See? Purified. You can't just grasp it. You have to be completely pure. 142. At this stage called Savitarka Samadhi, the word, meaning, and content are blended, becoming special wisdom. 143. In Nirvitarka Samadhi, you realize the difference between memory and intellectual illumination. Your memory becomes cleansed, and the light of consciousness shines with blissful purity. 143. 144. Savicharka Samadhi, deliberate, and Nirvichara Samadhi, non-deliberate, are the contemplation of subtle aspects. That means deliberate introspection and non-deliberate introspection. Deliberate discernment and non-deliberate discernment. 145. The subtlest dimension is consciousness. When consciousness dissolves in the space around you, it loses all attachments and becomes pure. So 145, again, this is another line of information. That's what a sutra is. It's a line of information, like a computer code, uploading onto a computer, like that. This is one of the most important lines of information ever spoken, anywhere. 145, again, is one of the most important sutras. 146. The states of samadhi described previously are dependent upon previous knowledge, which can lead to attachment. So this right here, I just got into a discussion with somebody about the words becoming a limitation, basically was the conversation. But you want to keep the words in their organized place, all right? But when you get to this point, the memories become literal, like energy around you. The knowledge becomes wisdom and energy around you. So in these states of samadhi, you've undergone a change. Look, not many people get to this level. It's very, very rare that someone gets to this level. If you're not practicing at a monastic level, it's very rare you're going to get here. But if you're a householder, if you're working a job, you can still get there if you practice fervently. But you have to be really, really dedicated to it. Your karma has something to do with it. 147. From mastery of Nirvicharva Samadhi, purity is attained and undisturbed, illuminated consciousness flows, igniting the spiritual light of the self. 148. Just memorizing the first pada is a lot, isn't it? It's 51 lines, and just memorizing the pada. When consciousness and wisdom become one, limitations are removed. Then the practitioner is capable of knowing anything and everything. Because when you close your eyes, you have to be able to see in the actual words of the text. You understand? And then you have to embody their essence. Second translation. Maybe this one will explain it. When consciousness resides in wisdom, a truth-bearing state of direct spiritual perception dawns. And then a lot of times when you start to get to this level, you'll go in and out of these states. If you start going in and out of these states, you have to develop your concentration. You might be born with a physical limitation that keeps you from being able to concentrate for these long periods of time and stuff like that. 149. The absolute truth is all-encompassing, limitless, and infinite. See? This is why I agreed with that. Yes, the absolute higher truth is all-encompassing, limitless, and infinite. But the pyramid has the foundation. If you take out the foundation of the pyramid, well, I'm sure it'll just fall down. But if you have like a box and you cut out the corner of the box will fall. So the earthly knowledge, the earthly stuff, the root chakra, it has to be no wrong understanding there. Perfect understanding of the lower truths before you could be balanced enough to get the highest and infinite truth. 150. The light of this realization bears the fruit of an evolved life. All previous mental impressions are left behind and new ones are prevented from forming. 151. When this impression is wiped out, all impressions are completely eradicated and perfect self-realization is achieved. 150. Oh, that's it. 151. So one of the biggest problems that almost every spiritual practitioner has is boredom. When you're doing your meditation, you get bored and you want to indulge in the senses over and over again. Now, the yogic way is through moderation. So if you want to indulge in the senses a little bit, watch a movie, that's fine. But if you're not doing a sadhana-based life, a meditation-based life, a recitation of the sutras-based life, a yogic life, a spiritual life, if you don't have that as your basis, then you're going to lean more into the sensuality, and then you're never going to reach samadhi. That's why it's well known that most people who do this have experienced great pain in their life, great emotional pain, great loss. I've had it all, and I've lost it all 3 times. Easy, okay? I've been on the complete up, and I've been on the complete down multiple times. And the emotional suffering and the craving and the spiritual suffering is extremely intense. And for me, the physical suffering it's nothing. I've trained through such physical suffering, crippling injuries, motorcycle accidents, you name it. My nerves and my tolerance for physical pain is extremely high. But the emotional pain that you feel from love, loss of your lover, loss of your children, loss of your father, your loved ones, the emotional pain is far deeper than that, you see? So it's only when you really start to see that the pleasure is tinged with pain that you're actually going to commit to this. Now, the first is dharma. Now, the second chapter is practice, all right? Once you have a full understanding, I've read the first chapter of this book at least 130 times, at least. And I wrote my own translation, and I read 6 or 7 different translations, easy. So I've studied this text through and through, and one of the reasons why I'm reciting it with you is so I can recite it nightly as well. Okay. If you go into a high master in a temple and you're actually having a conversation with them, they're going to ask you how many times you read the sutras. How many times have you read the text? One. Okay, well, you need to read it a couple hundred times. You know what I mean? And then the second one is Sadhanapada, which is practice. So in the Sadhanapada, it starts to give you the techniques and the first 5 limbs of yoga. The way that the limbs of yoga are put together are extremely efficient. And if you're missing one of the pieces of puzzle with your spiritual practice, because the question comes, well, what's right spiritual practice and what's wrong spiritual practice? And what exactly do I need to practice? I mean, there's so much stuff out there. I mean, there's knowledge for years. You could sit in a library for 20 years every day, 8 hours a day and study, reading 2 to 8 books a day. And it would probably take you 8 to 20 years to read all these spiritual texts. And that's if you're a speed reader and your level of comprehension is through the roof. I mean, like, you'd have to be like one of the highest level. I mean, I've seen people that can speed read a book in 2 minutes and recall every line. So, you know, those types of people, that's a level of intelligence and mental capability that not most people have. But when you get into the second pada, it explains the first 5 limbs, and you need to practice the 5 limbs along with the Dharma. So first you need to know why and what, and you need to understand universal law. That's what Dharma is. The hindrances, their accompaniments, the soul, the intellect, the mental fluctuations of mind, chitta, the 3 states of consciousness. All these things are contained in the first pada. They're small lines, so I think people underestimate them. Because the lines are so small, it's yoga chitta vritti nirodha. I can say that in one sentence in Sanskrit, and you could study that topic for a year. So understanding and grasping the Dharma first. Now, in the second one, it gets into the 5 limbs, and it tells you how to practice it. And both of them together become powerful. Then the third pada explains the top 3 limbs of yoga, which are more subtle and spiritual than the first 5. So the way the yogic sciences goes, it goes from morality first. Notice that the ancestors put morality before physicality. Interesting, right? They put morality first, then physicality. Then from physical, they go through the yogic sciences to get you into the full spiritual, which is omniscience and omnipresence. Thanks for joining me. We had 2 or 3 people tonight, and one person stuck with me. I would love to know who that person is. If you want, you can shoot a comment. Either that or it's one of my friends just leaving it on and letting it go. Oh, man. All right, guys. And the yoga or the Dhammapada study is at 8. Peace. And the Dhammapada study is at 8. Do you need to study the Dhammapada if you're studying the Yoga Sutras? No, you don't. Does the Dhammapada contain different information than the Yoga Sutras? Yes. The Dhammapada is poetically written. The Yoga Sutras is not poetically written. The Yoga Sutras is written concisely from a place of pure intent in the minimal amount of words to give you all the information you need to reach Kaivalya. That's how the Yoga Sutras is written. The Dhammapada is written poetically, beautifully, compassionately, right from the Buddha's words to completely contain the Dharma. But the Dhammapada contains information that the Yoga Sutras does not. But the Yoga Sutras contains information that the Dhammapada does not. Do you need to study the Dhammapada? No, you don't. Should you study it? If you're into philosophy, go for it. But you might just want to stick with the Yoga Sutras until you fully grasp the text. There's no point to overwhelm yourself with another text if you haven't mastered this one. All you really need to study is this one. All you really need to study is the Dhammapada, but the Dhammapada doesn't get into the gross and energetic changes of the senses. So the Dhammapada is just Dhamma. It has no practice in it. I hope this helps, guys. Peace.